Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, my name is Jillian Schaefer and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Acumatica 2020 R2 and U, presented by Jean Cummings, Jeremy Patoka, and Jeb Boudicay of SWK Technologies. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise down. However, you can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar. To submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording this presentation and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as to those who registered but were not able to attend. Please take a moment at the end of the presentation to answer our one survey question. And just a reminder, we will be holding a raffle at the end of the webinar for two $50 Amazon gift cards. We'll announce the winners at the end of the presentation. With that said, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend our webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you software and industry knowledge, tools, and support whenever you need it. So whether you're here doing research for a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. So we encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. This is Jen Cummings, and thank you so much, Jolene. For those of you who haven't met Jolene yet, she's a big part of our marketing team, and she's actually helping us plan our summit event, which I'll get into. But thank you so much for joining our webinar focused on how to get the most out of your Acumatica solution. I am super excited, and I'll share why in just a moment. But the focus of this webinar is to take a look at Acumatica's latest 2020 R2 release. So put more simply, we'll take a look at what Acumatica has added to its solution in the second half of 2020. One of the reasons our customers choose Acumatica is the technology was born in the cloud, and it's really known for its development capabilities. And Acumatica really focuses most of its resources on developing and evolving the solution. Jeremy Patoka, who most of you know, SWK Technologies Director of Solutions Architecting and thought leader in the Acumatica ecosystem, will be highlighting the latest features that Acumatica has added to the product. And the reason I'm super excited is for those of you who attended our 2020 R1, the first half of this year release webinar, we took your feedback, and the feedback that you all said was, well, a lot of you said was you wanted to see more. So today, instead of Jeremy sharing the top 5 features, he's going to be running through 30 different features that Acumatica has added. And also, a lot of you had shared that you wanted to see the release notes ahead of time. So all of you should have received the release notes from me in a personal email. If you haven't, please reach out to me, jean.cummings@swktechnologies.com, and I can get those out to you. After Jeremy presents, we'll take questions, and then we'll be holding a raffle at the very end. So 2 lucky winners will walk away with $50 Amazon gift cards. You must be present on the webinar to win. And then before all that, our very own Jeb Boudicay, SWK's practice manager, will be sharing some practice updates with us. And actually, I was really hoping we'd be sharing our faces as we present on a video conference today, especially to show off Jeb's beautiful, shiny, smooth, perfectly healthy looking head of hair that I'm a little jealous of, and he's grown out a little bit during COVID. But we've opted to keep our voices to voices only, so his head of hair wasn't a distraction, and so there's no lag in the presentation. First, though, I would like to inform everyone that Acumatica has opened up the registration for the Summit 2021. And Jeremy, if you would change the slide, thank you. So please mark your calendars for May 16th to 19th, 2021. You might mark your calendars all the way to the 21st if you plan on registering or participating in Acumatica training. But a couple important things to note. So SWK will be hosting a special private event for our Acumatica customers on Sunday, the 16th, and we'll send out a personal invite with links to register for both Acumatica Summit and our own special customer event. And I highly recommend you hold off on registering and wait for our invitation. More to come on that. But if you'd like to have more information about the agenda for Acumatica Summit, you can go to summit.acumatica.com. That's summit.acumatica.com. You can also just Google Acumatica Summit 2021, and you'll see a page come up. And if you click on Register Now, it will take you to a landing page, and on the landing page you'll see agenda. I've highlighted on the screen for you to say, and if you just click on the agenda, you can see the entire agenda ahead of time if you're curious. And it's at the Win. They are taking extreme COVID measures. They have a super long document that they've shared with us on the safety measures they're taking, and more to come on that. So thank you again, and I'd like to pass it over to Jeb Buttke. Jeb.
Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it. So before we get to Jeremy, I just wanted to touch on a few changes within the Acumatica and the SWK environment that may affect some of you. I'll be brief because I know you're here to hear Jeremy and all of the things that are happening with Acumatica. But first, just a couple of things. For any of those users that have their Acumatica environment hosted with SWK or would like to have your environment hosted with SWK, that part of our business has changed. We have combined our network services division and our secure cloud services divisions into a new MCS division, so mission critical services. We've really ramped up the support on that side of the business to better help our clients. And so we've got some new offerings there with regards to support. So if you're not hosted and would like to be, please reach out and let us know. For those of you that are hosted and have any kinds of issues that you need to resolve, you can either email networksupport@swk.com for more information about any issues to create a support ticket, whatever. And we've also got a new site that you can go to, status.swktech.com. That allows you to sign up for notifications, outages, things like that, and just generally see how our hosting environment is working. So just a couple of updates there for anybody that's using and or possibly interested in our hosting services. Next slide. So just a couple of notes about the practice as a whole before we go into features of the product. So it's been a busy year here at SWK. We've been very fortunate during the COVID times to still have had a very productive year. We've added 13 new Acumatica clients this year that have gone live on the system. So that's not new sales, but implementations that we've completed. Just this last month, we added yet another consulting resource. So our department is up to 12 plus contractors and plus development department. So we're really building things out well. And then last of all, we just want to give a big shout out and a thank you to our Acumatica clients. We appreciate you guys being here, and look forward to continuing to work with you. If you have any issues or questions, you can always submit support tickets to Acumatica support@swktech.com, or you can reach out to me individually.
Great. Thank you, Jeb and John, for kicking us off here. It's my goal now to take us through the product and really 30 of, from my perspective, the most relevant features for the entire group. I understand we have folks from all different businesses and types of vertical industries. So what I'm going to do today is really dive deeper into the user interface changes, things that would be relevant for everyone as a whole. And I might mention things sprinkled throughout the presentation about field services, construction, manufacturing, but I'm really staying to kind of the core changes. Most of you know Acumatica has 2 releases a year. Acumatica 2020 R1 was released earlier this year, right after the Acumatica Summit in January, early February. And then 2020 R2 was released last month. So Acumatica is in the 2-year release schedule. The second release is typically deeper functionality within the same module or feature set. And you'll see that come across today. They've really expanded existing tools and existing modules. What you'll likely see in 2021 R1, which will be debuted at this, a little bit later this year, probably between February and April. You're going to see additional net new modules or net new functionality that wasn't in the product before, like an additional manufacturing module or additional functionality for payroll or construction. And that's typically their larger release. Some of the themes and key features for the 2020 R2 release were really to save time and reduce expenses. And you're going to see that across the system. Just small screen changes so that you don't have to hit an actions drop down and then create a shipment. You can now just create a shipment on a sales order with the button at the top. So really saving time, working smarter and not harder is a big theme within the 2020 R2 release. Another grouping of themes has been to allow for better intercompany and cross-company sales. So you'll see, and we'll highlight some features that Acumatica has expanded the intercompany accounting functionality to actually allow you to set up a company as a vendor and a customer now, one of your branches / companies inside of Acumatica. So that's another kind of core functionality that's been released. And then the last area is always the technology. And Acumatica is very technology forward, and that is apparent in every single release. So some of the things that I'll highlight at a high level today are the advances in the platform. That's both in regards to bank feeds, document recognition, as well as enhancements to generic inquiries in the mobile platform. So we're going to cover a lot here, guys. We've got about 45 minutes to do that, to be able to save some time for questions. Some of the features, I have some slides prepared, and then we'll actually jump into the product. And then other features, I'm actually just going to show you a slide and mention it and then move on. Again, we really wanted to cover a lot. I think what will be a really good task for everybody on the webinar to do today would just be to have a pen and a notepad or a document open on your computer and just jot down a couple of things that are most relevant for you. Something to look forward to, something to ask questions about afterward that you can, when you're upgrading, follow up with some more questions or request potentially a new module that you may want to add. This is very high level today. We're covering a lot in a short amount of time. You are more than welcome to reach out to me, reach out to Jean or your customer account manager and request that we actually do a personalized demo for you in any of these areas. Okay, so we will just be scratching the surface. A couple more highlights just across the, before we dive into the details, across all the verticals. I'm just going to show this here for a minute and give you a couple of the highlights. We will cover the usability and the financials pretty well within our core focus for today, as well as technology. Just a couple of the industry verticals that I wanted to highlight. The e-commerce and core distribution suite has really gotten more robust. For those of you that know, Acumatica has had for the last 2 years a big commerce connector. They've actually added a Shopify connector that ships now with the base of the product. So really expanding their reach in the e-commerce world. We're going to actually show just a brief view of the Acumatica out-of-the-box point-of-sale solution. It's fairly new. I think it's a great option for people that are doing more of a counter sale environment today, but definitely something to consider into the future for anyone that has point-of-sale transactions or requirements, even if it's in the field. Manufacturing and field service have been bolstered up as well as part of this release. MRP received a nice performance boost. So those of you that have spent time waiting for MRP to run, they are now really trying to boost the performance of that to run several times a day. Field service allows for multi-day appointments. And probably the biggest thing, and I'll mention it a little bit later again, is that manufacturing is now part of the Acumatica core install. So same with construction. Those of you that have either construction or manufacturing know that that was developed as a customization package using Acumatica's tools, and typically required you to actually do an install of Acumatica, and then we would have to also install a customization package and version match. For both of these vertical solutions, that's no longer the case. Acumatica spent a lot of time bringing that into the core. So if you're in construction or you're in manufacturing, that's something we're going to talk about upon your next upgrade. There's some intricacies there that we're just going to want to discuss now that you'll be going from potentially customization packages to none, or just the ones that are specific to your business. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Platform usability and reporting features. One of the things that Acumatica is ranked very highly in is user adoption, and that's because they try to stay on the cutting edge of usability and reporting. So what we're going to cover next is something that's relevant for every single person on the webinar today. And the place that we're going to start is what's called the recently used records list. So Acumatica has gotten feedback over the years that the universal search is great, but they'd really love to have some sort of way to search screens and master files that you've recently used. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'll open this up for you. I have my instance in Microsoft Edge running of Acumatica 2020 R2 right behind the PowerPoint. So you guys should all be seeing that now. There's a new button right next to the universal search. And when I select on that, as long as I'm still logged in from when I was in at the beginning of this webinar, and it looks like I am, I can now see the recent records that I've accessed as a user. I accessed these several times this morning, logged out, logged back in, so it doesn't really matter if it's within a single user session. But what's the use case here, guys? Well, let's say that I'm currently on a vendor record, and I wanted to see a purchase order document that I was just entering for that vendor a few minutes ago. Well, a really easy way for me to do that now is I can select on the recently viewed records, and I can go back to my purchase order. Okay. One of the things that I forgot to mention before we started, this is not a production-ready 2020 R2 instance. This is running on a demo server that I manage. So if you feel like it's spinning or taking longer to load, it is a demo environment. This is not a production SaaS environment. So I just use that to get back to my purchase order. Now, when I select on that, I can actually filter by customer records I was recently on, purchase orders, and it's very quick as far as how it actually returns those results versus all the different records. So really useful. We find that that's not something users are going to really need to be trained on. Once they know it's there, they'll just start to use it as they see fit. Let me just go ahead and share that PowerPoint again. Great. So that was the recently used records. Another piece of functionality that was released is unified notifications. And those of you that have been running Acumatica for maybe the past year or two know that business events was a big conversation in your project, most likely. That's the way when we need notifications either to a mobile app or we need an inquiry screen that's going to do something. That's a business event, like notify users about activities. Going back to, at least since I've been involved in Acumatica, going back to version 4.2 in 2015, 2014 actually, we were always able to create notifications. And there used to be this notifications button in the upper right. Well, part of the 2020 R2 release, now with the iteration of business events, is to consolidate just having one notification engine. So you will no longer see notifications. You'll just see a business event button, and we're really consolidating all of that into business events. Part of the upgrade process will be to translate any existing notifications in Acumatica into business events. So I'm just going to pull my my instance back over here to show you guys that. You can see now in the upper right of my screen, I no longer have that notification button that we used to have, and it would hover over it and you'd be able to create if you were able to see this. Now I actually have business events, and just by clicking that button, I can see which business events do I already have. So we already have a business event or a notification that is sent whenever the purchase order is awaiting approval. So this is actually tied into the approval workflow, this specific business event. Well, let's say that I wanted to create a business event that anytime there was a purchase over $50,000, I just wanted to know about it. I just wanted to get a little push notification or an email that would give me that functionality. Well, now I can go ahead and I can create that right from this screen. So I go ahead and I can add POs over 50K and hit OK. And it'll actually go ahead and take me to the business events form where I would go and configure the trigger, and I configure how I want this business event to work. I'm not going to cover this today. This is all existing functionality that's there that we can train you on if you're not using. I just wanted to highlight that the business events are consolidated with notifications, and this is the path forward for events and notifications in Acumatica. Really powerful feature if you're not using that today to consider and jot down on your notepad, as I mentioned. Now, one of the things that Acumatica has started to do over the past several releases is actually allow for better integration and with additional services and better artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the tools that are available today for Acumatica to tie into in order to do things like receive accounts payable invoices and expense receipts and apply some machine learning to that to be able to grab the data off the receipts or the invoice and actually fill out the bill or the expense receipt for you is now available. So Acumatica out of the box does not require any third parties. Acumatica out of the box now has a new screen. And this, by the way, I will clarify, this is a feature that you would have to purchase. This is not just a feature within accounts payable that's going to be there. You would have to purchase. It's a pretty nominal additional subscription cost to your subscription, but you would actually purchase that piece and you would be able to do what you're seeing here, which is in several ways create AP bills in Acumatica automatically. Now, many of you know that we've been talking about AP automation at SWK for a very long time with a tool called AvidXchange. We very much stand behind that tool still. It does a lot that the out-of-the-box Acumatica will never do. For example, on the pay side, right, being able to actually initiate payments. Avid as well is a solution that all of your invoices are sent to a PO box, and Avid actually codes in to the system for you, so you don't even have to open envelopes. So there are certain features, if you're wondering, like, hey, what's the difference, or why would I do this versus Avid? We'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm just really excited that Acumatica is now talking more and more about AP automation, and it's a basic implementation of AP automation within this feature. So let me just go to the next screen. This is the typical workflow for folks that have some sort of procure to pay process, right? We've got approvals that are made and purchase orders, and then from the vendor, you're actually getting the bill. The bill could come either in a PDF in an email, it could come through an EDI transaction, or it could just be a paper and an envelope that you guys need to scan in. So Acumatica has allowed now within the core of the system to be able to actually apply that AI ML engine and do a bill recognition. There's several ways that we can do that. So this is your vendor over here. Your vendor sends you an invoice. That invoice could be emailed. And there's actually a way within the Outlook add-in where you can send and create the AP bill from Outlook. And Acumatica will take it through the same recognition step and then put it in your accounts payable as an invoice. Another way would be you receive the paper bill, and you're going to go ahead and scan it in. So once it's scanned in, it's either dragged or scanned in to the incoming mail processing, and then it's going to run through the same bill recognition service. Okay. The last way that you could actually create bills in more of an automated AP way using this document recognition engine is by using the incoming email processing engine. So let's say that you have an accounts payable at yourcompany.com email address. Well, that can be set up in Acumatica. We can receive the emails. Acumatica will automatically grab the invoice that's attached to the email, and it will do its best to grab the vendor and even all the detail line items. This does include three-way matching. A large majority of our customers are some sort of distribution manufacturer or somebody with inventory purchases. So really important to know that you can get your three-way match through this automated service. The last thing that I'll mention here is once the bill's created, it's still going to give someone in accounting the opportunity to actually come through, review the coding of the bill, just like kind of what you're seeing over here, and make sure, actually look at the bill and go ahead and code the correct items in, review general ledger accounts before it's actually sent for approval or released, which is posted for us in Acumatica. Okay. So really exciting options. That could be a 30-minute demo in and by itself, so I just wanted to cover that one at a high level. We'll talk about the same type of concept with the expense receipts a little bit later and how Acumatica has made some changes there with integrating with banks. Now, another feature that I have been asked really since dashboards have been a thing in Acumatica is customers that would like to do what this customer has over on the right, and they'd like to hang a TV. You know, these TVs are so inexpensive these days. You can get like a 42 or a 60-inch TV for a couple $100. Hang it on the wall, connect it to Acumatica through a PC or some mirroring device, and actually have a nice dashboard like these folks do. And this is actually shipment information. So here's there's actually a little bit of receiving and then some shipping, and then shipment lines per day. So they're able to see this, whatever information that folks need to see either in the manufacturing plant or your shipping, receiving folks, they're able to see that live on a TV. Now, customers have been doing this for quite some time in Acumatica, but you needed to do some workarounds. What was the workaround? What was the problem? Well, the problem was Acumatica didn't automatically refresh those tiles live. So what we would do is we'd essentially deploy a Google Chrome applet, which would go through and every couple minutes it would refresh your screen. Not really ideal. Acumatica wanted to be able to solve for that out of the box. So now what Acumatica can do in 2020 R2 is just a slight change from what you've seen it do in 2020 R1 in regards to dashboards. And one of the features that was released most recently regarding dashboards was the ability to have certain tiles show up and not refresh all the time. So you'll see mine is actually set right here, and all the dashboard tiles showed up. I have a refresh every hour, so you can see that this was last updated 38 minutes ago. Right? It just allows the dashboards to load a little bit quicker in a production environment. If I hit design, which takes, and by the way, you need user access to do this. You could do this today. Hit design and actually go over and hit the little pencil. I will be able to edit this. Well, in Acumatica, you're actually able to go in and now say, hey, irregardless of page loading, every 5 minutes, we're going to have that showing on a screen. And we want that dashboard to update every 5 minutes so that people are looking at near live data, okay? And that's what's going to give people that that caching and refresh that you would want to be able to display this in a live environment like your shop floor. Let me get out of designer mode. Now, I typically try not to pick favorites, but if there was one functionality that I think is the most meaningful in the 2020 R2 release, this is it. And generic inquiries, the generic inquiry tool is one of the 5 reporting tools included in the base of Acumatica. This is also the foundation of many other elements inside of Acumatica. Business events are actually tied into generic inquiries. Here's a list of all the different tools that use GIs, we call them. So dashboards, pivot tables, business events, those historically the notification templates, certain screens to the mobile application, entry screens, side panels, actually import and export scenarios, and then OData. These are all the different tools that look to the generic inquiry tool in Acumatica to retrieve, delete, and update data, okay? Anyone that goes to even just the list of sales orders on your entry form to your sales orders, that's technically a generic inquiry. So this is a really key part of Acumatica. And for those of you that have tried to create generic inquiries, they've been a little bit of a challenge if you don't have SQL background in joining tables and knowing key fields. It's a very powerful tool, but it required in the past a lot of kind of prior knowledge and knowing what an inner join is versus a left join, and also just knowing the schema of Acumatica with limited documentation. This has been, for me, by far the number one inhibitor to people really taking advantage of inquiries and then all of the other elements on top that you saw, like business events, because the inquiries could be a challenge to make. So I'm really excited to debut what's called auto-suggest table joins. And from my perspective, this makes the generic inquiry screen much, much more usable for non-technical users. So I'm inside of the generic inquiry screen right now. And we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to create a new inquiry together. So I'm going to just call this inquiry inventory profitability. And I think I might actually just need to refresh on that screen. That might have timed out on me from earlier. Okay, so from this screen, usually the first step, and these tabs work left to right, the first step in creating a new inquiry was to create a table. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a table that some of you are familiar with called ARTran. This is like your AR transaction register or table, if you will, with accounts receivable data. So I'm going to go ahead and just search up ARTran. You could also search by the display name, which is a little bit more user-friendly. And then it's always good to save once you get to a certain spot in these generic inquiries. And from here, in the past, what you've had to do is you've had to add all the other related tables. You'd fill this area with the related tables, and you'd have to know what those were. And then you'd have to go and you'd have to say, all right, between my inventory item table and my ARTran table, we're going to do an inner join on this field, right? And that's where this screen and functionality really broke apart for some people. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this new Add Related Table button. And what it's going to do is it's going to already show me, pop-up's going to pop up here, and it's going to show me potential tables that are related to the ARTran table. Let me just make sure it's not popping up behind me here. Great. All right, so what you're seeing here is all of the related tables to the ARTran table. So let's go ahead and we'll pull in that inventory item one. And I don't even need to know what that one is called. I'm just going to start typing in inventory item. And this is the one that I want here. So we'll select the related table. When I hit that select table, it pulls that in as a child table. And here's where, for me, the magic happens. It's going to do an inner join between my ARTran table and my inventory item table on ARTran inventory ID. All that work just happened for me. I didn't need to know anything about which was the key field, where did I do the linking, and what type of join did I need to do. Acumatica did all of that for me. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and add another related table to ARTran so that we could pull in business accounts or customer accounts. So I'm going to go ahead and this one I happen to know is called B account. So I'm just going to search this and we're going to bring in the business account, the B account. So we'll go ahead and we'll add that. And I actually forgot to add it, select the related table. So let me go ahead and do that. Select the table, it brings in the table and then makes the join, and then we add that. So that's, again, now if I go to the relations, all my relations have already, my relationships between tables have been made for me, okay? So I can go ahead and save that. For some of you that maybe this tool is new for, that might have been a little confusing. For others, you're probably jumping up and down because this has been a headache for a lot of people for a long time. So what I'll do is I'm just going to show you, now that I've got the tables joined and my relationships made, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the tables, and let's just bring in a couple of fields because I want to show you the new preview area within the generic inquiry screen. So I'm going to go ahead and let's bring in the date. These are my columns, by the way, guys, if you're not familiar with this tool. Let's bring in the cost. So that was from my ARTran table. Let's also bring in the customer. So I'll bring in account CD. And let's also bring in the inventory item. And we'll bring in inventory ID. Great. So I'll save that. There are a lot of other features. Again, this is not intended to be a training on the generic inquiry screen, just highlighting some of the new features available here. So that has now saved. I'll give you a warning, there's about 11,000 records that return in this inquiry, so it is going to take a minute to spin in this demo environment. But the beauty of this is I could collapse my menu over to the left, and I could be working on my generic inquiry, I could be making changes on the fly, and just hit this preview button, and it's going to show that to me within the same screen grid. In the past, those of you that have done previews or viewing inquiries, you actually had to leave the screen, and then you had to come back and you had to select the inquiry again, and it added many clicks. So with that theme of saving time and being more efficient, that's what Acumatica is doing. So as I mentioned, there were almost 11,000 records that have come up. But it's just showing you how quick and easy I'm able to go ahead and make certain fields available, and it really brings it down to the user level and the field level, no longer needing to really have more of an understanding of the database itself. One other little tip that I'd mention, if you're, when you actually upgrade to 2020 R2, going to test this out, there is the big question I get is, how do I know if it's an ARTran table or an inventory item table? Well, there are descriptions now. So there are descriptions for these tables that will give you that information. Like, for example, the inventory item represents stock items and non-stock items. So it gives you a really good narrative on that. But there's also this, if you have the customizer role, this little inspect element button. You could also get to it by doing Control Alt and click. This exists today. And what you'd be able to do is, if you were on a sales order, for example, you'd actually be able to hover over a sales order number and use that, and it would show you what the data class is, which is essentially the table that you're pulling in. Okay, so it would say SO order, and then the data field would be order number. So that's something to play around with if you're looking to just dive into this tool. Really exciting. I think I hope that all of our customers wind up taking advantage of this if they haven't in the past. It's been my favorite reporting tool in Acumatica for years, and they just made it better. A few other changes to generic inquiries has just been the ability to change the screen ID. So some of you who have tried to do that in the past and realized you weren't able to, that's been a challenge. So this is a quick way to change the screen ID. And then I already mentioned the preview functionality. Great. Acumatica has made several changes in technology. So a couple of these are very simple but powerful. So Acumatica has allowed you to add user-defined fields with more attributes or features on it. So I'll go ahead back to my Acumatica instance, and I added one of these on the purchase order form just so that you can see. Just a reminder for everybody, attributes are user-defined fields on master files and transactional screens that don't require a developer to put a field in. Okay, these are just basically point and click fields. So I added one to the purchase order, and in the past release, you were able to do exactly what I'm showing you now, which is add a new field. You weren't able to put additional controls on the field. So when you add new fields, you go to this customization and manage user-defined fields button, and from this screen, you can go ahead and you can add attributes. So if there's a field that's a drop down or a multi-select or an open text field or a checkbox, you would be able to add the field and the options in this pick list manage attributes area. And then this is where I actually add it to the screen. So what's new in 2020 R2 is this visibility button, where I can actually say, you know what, based on the workflow of this document, if it's a normal PO, then this field is relevant. If it's a dropship PO, we don't even really want this to be shown, right? And then if it's a blanket PO, this is actually required. So you're really able to add all that additional logic in point and click, tying in some of these UDFs in a more robust way. A question I always get is, hey, are those fields available for reporting? And the answer is yes. Any attributes you add can be pulled into the generic inquiry tool or the Acumatica form and report designer. Okay. All right. Those of you using the Acumatica mobile app know that it's not a separate database, it's just a mobile UI to the same Acumatica SQL database you see from the browser. And one of the things that has been a challenge has been pop-ups, similar to pop-ups and warnings that you would get in the browser, seeing those on the mobile device. So Acumatica has actually brought in the dialog boxes, similar to what you see in the browser, into the mobile app. So, here's an example where you're being asked to confirm if you want to update the billing settings on the customer. Okay. All right. In the area of financials, Acumatica has made a lot of enhancements to the core. And the couple that I'd like to highlight here are just the intercompany and cross-company transactions. For years now, Acumatica has allowed everyone to do intercompany transactions and have an intercompany accounting module that calculates the due to and due from for AR documents, and actually for journal entries and many different documents. What they haven't, and a good example of that would be an accounts payable invoice where I'm having my services company and my products company split the invoice. That would typically cause an out of balance. That's why you need to have the due to, due from, and kind of in the general ledger to keep your your companies in balance with one another. What Acumatica has released is the ability for you to have companies and branches within a tenant actually be able to do sales with one another. So recording a true cross-company sale. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at what that is. From the branches form, you're going to notice some new screens and fields and or tabs and fields. So when I actually open up this branch form, I'll select on my product's wholesale branch. And just by going to the actions dropdown, I'm able to see that this is actually already extended as a vendor. So the product's wholesale company has been extended to a vendor record, and that Acumatica created the vendor record. And then I've got a Services East company that's been extended as a customer. So I could go ahead and I could view the customer record. Not a whole lot of magic there, guys. It's either a vendor record or a customer record that Acumatica created knowing it was a branch, not a customer like one of your actual customers. Where this comes into play is on an actual sales order, AR invoice, you're able to see a new area that would actually include information and transaction tracking about the true cross-company sale. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up a specific AR invoice that has this intercompany, new intercompany functionality, and it was invoice 8877. So you can see this was actually to a customer, but that customer is Service East, which is that other company here in my company structure, Services East. So let's open that up and I'll just highlight the new areas of the screen that weren't available in the past. So if I go ahead and look at the Financial Details tab, I can open up the batch to the journal entry and see the journal entry for this AR invoice. What I can see now down in the bottom right is the intercompany invoicing. So I could actually see the related accounts payable bill that was generated on the release of this invoice, okay, since it was included in intercompany processing. Really exciting to see Acumatica continue to take steps towards transacting across companies. You know, different company calendar support that was released a year ago. So that is going to continue to bits and pieces to be released in future releases. Another piece that has been released is centralized account management. And from the customers form, you're now able to restrict the visibility of that customer within specific companies and branches of the organization. Those of you that had this requirement in the past had to use what's called row level restriction in Acumatica, and that's always been a challenge. It's a very powerful restricting tool in Acumatica, but it's a little bit technical and I'll use the word gnarly to use and get your hands around. So Acumatica made it a lot easier moving forward by actually having the ability to have customers dedicated or restricted to certain branches. Another feature that was kind of there but not as pronounced as it is in 2020 R1 is the primary contact information on a business account. So this is on the business account form, the customer and the vendor screens, where you actually have the area to identify a primary contact, okay? A lot more intuitive and, again, pronounced than in versions in the past. Now, this is something, again, that would probably take 30 minutes to an hour to demonstrate, so I'm going to move quickly here and happy to follow up with an additional demo if needed. For full transparency, this is another paid feature. This is not going to come with your banking module in the version you have. You would have to pay a nominal subscription increase for this feature, but it is a really powerful feature. And for both bank feeds for your checking account, let's say, and bank feeds from credit card companies, we're able, using a service called AccuSync, to be able to bring in bank transactions. So all the transactions that are hitting your bank account for reconciliation purposes, as well as corporate credit card or credit card transactions, so that you don't have to go enter every receipt. I get asked these questions, especially over the last 18 months, in at least half of the demonstrations that we do on the sales team. So this is a feature that people are really expecting to be in a modern ERP system, and I'm really excited to say that it's there now in Acumatica. How is this going to help make your life easier? Well, on the bank statement side, rather than needing to get a CSV from your bank, load it in, process bank transactions, you're going to be able to click a couple of buttons or even automate that to bring your bank value, be able to reconcile it with your book value with some automation, and do that without ever passing a file around. That's the value of this. So a lot of efficiency to be gained here if you find that you have a challenging time doing bank recs in Acumatica and getting the bank value data into your system. This is a great way to do that. Same thing on the expense receipt side. I get that question all the time. Great, you've got an expense receipt module. It can OCR and ICR what you snapped in pictures from the mobile device. Great, but can it bring in transactions from the credit card statement? And if the answer is no, that's what it's been historically for Acumatica. That's been a challenge. But now we can actually bring those in and just allow users from the mobile app to snap pictures of receipts for transactions that are already there. And so this is that specific example where you've got corporate expenses. Those are coming into Acumatica through that integration and requiring the user to just associate the picture of the receipt, not necessarily the entire transaction from the receipt. And again, this is something we're happy to dive into more detail as you upgrade and consider adding additional functionality. Acumatica has, from the field services side, released an additional feature to enter time by the crew. For our field services folks, we've had workarounds to do this in the past. And again, this is another thing for field service companies, specifically field service and construction companies. They don't enter time by the person, they enter it by the crew. So being able to set up crews with employees in it and enter the time at the crew level is a big advancement for field services. Acumatica continues to release additional base user roles. So the most recent ones were actually for the payroll module, but it's really good to see that they're adding to that list of user roles that are there for our customers to use and tweak and not necessarily need to create from scratch. The Acumatica CRM has seen a bunch of additional features. My favorite, again, just based on interacting with a couple hundred companies a year, I get asked a lot of questions, and this is one of them. How can I pin activities to the top of my taskbar? So, this is an opportunity record in Acumatica. And a question I get is, hey, we're getting all sorts of activities that are entered into this grid, but when myself as the sales rep comes in, I want to be able to pin activities to the very top so I don't have to scroll down and filter. And again, there have been some workarounds to be able to accomplish this with the other columns, but it's really good just to have this pin, unpin button. Acumatica has made several enhancements to the sales order form. They got feedback that there were too many times that they actually had to go to the actions dropdown, users did, and then select the option. Something that we're going to do with every single sales order is ship it out. So they actually brought the create shipment button into the upper right, as well as the put on hold button onto the upper right. They also got rid of one of the tabs. I believe it was called payment settings. And it's just part of the payments tab on the sales order. Part of that has actually brought further automation into creating payments and prepayments from the sales order form without necessarily needing to have a user role that gives you, a slight access into AR. So Acumatica has allowed you to do that in more of a pop-up data entry view than the old actually recording an AR prepayment that way. They've also introduced reauthorization for credit card transactions, which is a big thing for folks right now that are potentially having supply chain issues and they're getting a credit card off but not shipping for 45 days. Acumatica has also allowed a new feature on the credit terms to be able to put a flag in for prepayment settings. So basically, a customer can have a specific credit term that requires them to have a prepayment of 20% before something ships. I'm going to go pretty quick here because I want to respect everyone's time. I mentioned the Shopify integration, the point of sale integration. These are additional features that come with the Commerce Edition or can be added to the Commerce Edition. We're seeing, for those of you that may not know, SWK is actually partnering with BigCommerce and Shopify in a bigger way than ever before. Seth Kuhn, our e-commerce expert, is actually running that as the lead since he's got the experience in that arena. So we're working with customers constantly right now on getting their shopping carts online, getting it connected to Acumatica. And if you're in that boat with either BigCommerce or Shopify, or Magento for that, we'd love to talk to you a little bit more about it and have actually out-of-the-box features to support much of that. I mentioned the point of sale solution earlier. It's what you would expect out of an out-of-the-box point of sale. This is a brand new module, guys. So again, the example that I gave you earlier was if you're doing counter sales today or you have no point of sale today, this is a great first step for you. If you have a very specific point of sale that does exactly what you want for a restaurant or for your retail environment, it may still make more sense for you to integrate and let this module fill out a little more of the next few versions than just abandon what you have and switch to it. That's where we can kind of act as your advocate in between the new functionality that the publisher is releasing and then probably what's best for your business. And it's really exciting that Acumatica has released this for folks that have fairly straightforward point of sale requirements. But again, I think it may be early for the larger customer base to abandon what they already have and then move to this. Happy to have that conversation in more detail, but it really brings in all the type of hardware integrated to Acumatica's point of sale that you would require in a retail environment. The last feature that I'm actually going to mention here is the multi-day appointments. I've had requests for years about field service organizations wanting more of a calendar view with multi-day appointments stretched over the calendar. And you kind of had this again with a small workaround, but this really gives you the ability to have longer appointments or field service work orders, you may be calling them that. And it allows you to record break time and travel time over the multi-day appointment and represent that in your staff calendar board. Last thing that I would just mention is that Acumatica, again, has moved manufacturing into the core of the product. That also has included the integration of a new third-party tool called eWorkplace apps. And we actually have at least a customer or two that are running on that today. eWorkplace apps is a quality management module. Never existed before. They've made really great headway, and we're a big proponent of that package at this point. So if you're somebody that's using manufacturing and you're interested in adding some quality modules embedded into your Acumatica system, that's a great product addition that we're really excited about for nonconformance, for CAPA, for quality, checklists, inspections. Those are all modules inside of the quality suite. So with that, I just wanted to see if there were any questions in the chat, even if it's just for us to follow up on. And then we, in a minute, will announce who won the $50 gift card.
Thank you, Jeremy. We'll now open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar. And we'll give that a minute in case any come through. And just a reminder, everyone, we do have subject matter experts here. This is a great opportunity to have your questions answered in real time. And it does look like we have a few that came through during the webinar, Jeremy. The first being, what is the best new capability or feature of 2020 R2 for field service in your opinion?
Yeah, so we brought that in right there at the end. In my opinion, it was the multi-day appointments as well as the crew time. That's been a challenge for some of our field service companies that might have even had to consider customizing that. So being able to enter time at the crew level for jobs and appointments, as well as the multi-day appointment, and having that show on your calendar. There are several others that we could dive into, but those were the two that stood out to me that were missing in the product before.
We have a few more. At the last summit, Acumatica mentioned that they were working on a feature that will allow to have different GLs and different functional currencies for branches versus having to set up a separate tenant for international subsidiaries if they are on a different currency. Are there any updates on this?
That's a great question, and Acumatica has continued to roll out small pieces of functionality at a time to get to that end goal. That certainly is the end goal. I don't know if that's in 2021 R1 or R2, but that is not in 2020 R1. Actually having a company in a single tenant in US dollars and another company in that same very tenant in euros. That's still not supported as of today. You'd have to have a separate tenant. But keep your eyes out in the next release or two. Acumatica said 2.5 years ago that they were going to continue making small steps to get there, and they've done that. They've had the master financial calendar. They've allowed us to be able, which gives you companies that have different fiscal year ends, right, in the same instance. We're now able to restrict customers easier to companies within the same instance. And now we're able to do business with companies in the same instance. So I anticipate seeing that in the near future.
We have another CRM pinning. Is that user specific?
That is not user specific unless you add an additional filter in the activities grid. But that would be pinned to the top for all users that have access to the opportunity.
We have another. If no R1 was implemented, is it difficult to implement R2?
I'm going to let Jeb ask that question answer that question if he's still on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you say that again, Jolene?
Yep. If no R1 was implemented, is it difficult to have or implement R2?
No, not particularly. The more separation there is between versions. So if you are on 2017 R1, that makes the upgrade a little bit more difficult. But if you're just going from 19 R2 to 20 R2, that's not difficult.
Great. And we have another. Can the recently accessed list be cleared selectively or totally?
That's a great question, and I'm not familiar enough with the feature to answer that on the fly, but if you provide your information, I can get an answer to you.
Okay. We'll send that answer
And this
to you.
is Jen. I want to make sure we get our raffles in. I wanted to just say, great presentation. I have already received 2 emails from customers with their excitement on the features. And this webinar is being recorded and sent out to anyone that is registered today.
Correct. We have just a few more. View inquiry will be on R2? Question mark?
Yes. The new inquiry functionality and that preview is part of 2020 R2.
And we have one more. We're currently using JE to do duo to/from in R2. Is the new feature applicable in the GL environment?
The existing feature, the existing Acumatica intercompany accounting module, is available within the journal entry screen. The new functionality is truly just for the cross-company sales. So I'd have to, will it do cross-company sales within the GL? Not unless you have an AR invoice or a sales order doing business with another one of your companies. It would need this transaction would have to start at that level to flow to the GL. But again, that'd be something to consider, just how it works within the existing intercompany accounting functionality to see if that might meet the need.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeremy. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. I'll be announcing the winners for our 2 raffles for our attendees that were drawn shortly before the webinar from our registrants. And the winners are Elena Bespolova at Unify Square. It looks like Elena's on the call, so congratulations, Elena. And Michael Johnson at CCI. And it looks like Michael isn't on the call, so the second winner will be John Putner at Advantage Sports. Congratulations to you both. We'll be in touch after the webinar. Thank you so much, Jeremy, John, and Jeb, for your informative presentation and for taking the time to be here today.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful
Thank
rest
you.
of your
Thanks,
day.
everyone.